Hello, everybody. This is Sharonda, and this is um today is December the 23rd, which is a Thursday, and I have decided to forefront a new podcast for my list of podcasts under my Spreaker studio, as well as my YouTube channel. And I'm entitling this podcast Ancient Ancestry. Okay. And it was just something I just thought of off of a whim that I was urged to do because I have an interest in that topic. And what I will begin to do is speak on the motherland. Okay. Um, I'm going to go over in this podcast ancient Egyptian information and the different pharaohs and kings within the dynasty of ancient Egypt. I will touch on some information on not just with ancient Egypt, but some of the other countries within the African continent in regards to the cultures and customs and things of that nature, because in history, you know, in schools and in history, there's not so many discussions in regards to the continent of Africa, the very vast continent of Africa. And I do believe that is purposefully to get people to, get a hunger for Africa, the true information of Africa, because a lot of the things I feel like that is just, that is presented in the media worldwide is oftentimes not the truth. As in any given place or situation, you may have some over exaggeration and some underreporting in all sense of the matter. Okay. So again, this podcast is entitled Ancient Ancestry. It just so happened to be entitled that because I thought that was a good little uh topic or title to the podcast. It won't only be ancient history, it will also be history more closer to the 2000 centuries. Okay. Today I'm going to speak on the pharaoh or the king Tut. We all have heard of King Tut. We all have seen the depictions and a lot of the movies from the past and of King Tut and who King Tut was, and a lot of the information that you may come across are not accurate. There have been some depiction of King Tut being of Mediterranean descent, Israeli descent, to name a few. King Tut was a king. He was a young king in ancient Egyptian history. He was a pharaoh and a part of a dynasty. He could have very well been of a mixed cultural as to while a lot of the depictions would show that he is of a quote unquote Mediterranean or even Middle Eastern ancestry. He could have very well been the mixture of a combination of cultures, but that is not the main point as to what his actual race was, because ultimately I do believe he was of African descent, which is essentially the Black race. Okay. Now, so it says Tutankhamun, who was a ancient Egyptian pharaoh, who was the last of his royal family to rule during the end of the 18th dynasty during the New Kingdom of Egyptian history. So it says his father was believed to have been Pharaoh Akhenaten, whose mummified discovery of his tomb, and it lists as KV55, his mother, is believed by DNA testing has been identified as being his sister, is what it has listed here. It mentions that Tutankhamun took the throne at 8 or 9 years of age under the unprecedented visorship of his eventual successor, all to whom he may have been related. He married his half-sister and Keshinonmun. During their marriage, they lost 2 daughters, one at 5 to 6 months of pregnancy, and the other shortly after birth at full term. So it mentions that many Egyptologists believe the translation may be inaccurate and closer to the life of let me just go back because I skipped over some information. So his name Tutankhamun and Tutankhamun are thought to mean living image of Aten and living image of Amun. With so there is some debate as to what the actual meaning of his name was, okay? And this is going off of the scribes, the hieroglyphics, scribes which are within the tombs of the pyramids and sacred places within Egypt, okay? So it says that Tutankhamun restored the ancient Egyptian religion after its dissolution by his father and reached and adopted the priestly orders of 2 important cults and began restoring old monuments damaged during the previous Amarna period. It says he moved his father's remains to the Valley of Kings, as well as relocating the capital from Akhetaten back to the Thebes or Thebes. Tutankhamun was physically disabled with a deformity of his left foot, along with bone necrosis that required the use of a cane, several of which were found in his tomb. He had other health conditions, including scoliosis, and had contracted several strains of malaria. It says in 1922, there was a discovery of the tomb, and I did go over this in my Spiritual Sense podcast where I mentioned about curses. And ultimately, the main thing that was known and that is so apparent about this King Tut is that it was elaborate riches that was noted within his tomb, and he was mummified, and I think what the main curiosity about ancient Egyptian was the ability to preserve and the use of jewels and how they was able to use these artifacts to show how brilliant and masterminds the Egyptians were back then. Okay, so many of the treasures, of course, was dispersed all over the world into many museums, for the world to see. Tours was allowed in 1962, of a lot of the things that people have come to know about King Tut and his predecessors. Let's see. So it goes a little further in terms of his family history, as I mentioned with the dynasty. And just to name a few, it mentions about King Tut was born during the reign of Akhenaten during the late 18th dynasty of Egypt. Akhenaten's reign was characterized by a dramatic shift in ancient Egyptian religion known as Atenism and the relocation of the capital to the site of Amarna, which gave its name to the modern term for this era, the Amarna period. Towards the end of the Amarna period, two other pharaohs appeared in the record who were apparently Akhenaten's co-regents. We have Nefertiti, a female ruler who may have been Akhenaten's wife, Nefertiti, or his daughter, Meritaten, and Semkari, whom some Egyptologists believe was the same person as Nefertiti, but most regard as a distant figure. So it just goes on and on and on in regards to, his family history. So it mentions that in inscriptions from Hermopolis refers to King Tut as a king's son and is generally thought to have been the son of Akhenaten, although some suggest instead that Semerkari was his father. Inscriptions from King Tut reigns treat him as a son of Akhenaten's father, Amenhotep III, but that is only possible in Akhenaten's 17-year reign, including a long co-regency with his son, a possibility that many Egyptologists once supported, but is now being abandoned. So it is very complex and convoluted, to say the least, in regards to the information that is presented here in regards to the ancient Egyptian history. But we're going to go a little further into the health and death of King Tut. So he was slight build of roughly 5'6". Says he has had a large front incisor and an overbite, characteristic of the Tutmosis royal line to which he belonged. Analysis of the clothing found in his tomb, particularly the dimensions of his loincloths and belts, indicate that he had a narrow waist and rounded hips. So who's to say that he was not actually female? Because if you begin to, a lot of the history, I do feel as though many of those persons that occur in those, in history were actually female, but, they, because they didn't have respect for many instances, that may not be in all cultures, but in some instances, it may not have been appropriate for a female to act in such a manner or to have such a sense of authority. So they would use the image of a male and show it in more of an effeminate quality, so to speak. So that could very well be that, because it it does appear to be of feminine quality. So it just goes on and on and on in terms of, some syndromes that could have taken place because of the, genetic makeups and particularly physical makeups of King Tut. Um, I mean, from what it appears, he had a lot of stuff going on genetically wise. In regards to what the analysis and the DNA information that we got here, everything from a cleft palate to scoliosis, to club foot. I mean, just all kind of looks like genetic problems. And essentially it mentions that there was, it looks like a compound left leg fracture, in addition to possibly some malaria, bouts with malaria infection. So it goes on in regards to the death. It says there are no survivor records of the circumstances of King Tut's death. It has been the subject of considerable debate and major studies. So it says it's thinking that it's a combination of multiple weakening disorders, leg fracture perhaps as a result of a fall, a severe malarial infection. Is really no, they really can't say based on what they have investigated in terms of the actual death of King Tut. But I just want to touch a little bit more on the curse. I did do a podcast yesterday where I mentioned about the curse of King Tut and things of that nature. I do feel as though King Tut could have very well have been a female. That's what I feel. I honestly also believe that he could have very well been an experiment, so to speak, and they could have helped forefront a lot of the advancement in medicine right now. Okay. So it says for many years, rumors of a curse of the pharaohs persisted, emphasizing the early death of some of those who had entered the tomb. Again, it goes in and speaking about George Herbert, the fifth of the Earl of Carnarvon, who died on the 5th of April of 1923, 5 months after the discovery of the first step leading down to the tomb on November the 4th of 1922. The cause of the death was pneumonia supervening on erysipelas, which is of the face, a streptococcal infection of the skin and underlying soft tissue. The Earl had been in an accident, an automobile accident in 1901, making him very unhealthy and frail. His doctor recommended a warmer climate, so in 1903, the Carnarvons traveled to Egypt, where the Earl became interested in Egyptology. Along with the stresses of excavation, Carnarvon was already in a weakened state when an infection led to pneumonia. A study showed that of the 58 people who were present when the tomb and sarcophagus were open, and that's kind of weird because I never heard that word before. Uh, Only 8 died within a dozen years. Howard Carter died of lymphoma in 1939 at the age of 64. The last survivors, including Lady Evelyn Herbert, Lord Carnarvon's daughter, who was among the first people to enter the tomb after its discovery in November of 1922, who lived for a further or another 57 years and died in 1980. The American archaeologist J.O. Kinnaman, who died in 1961, 39 years after the event. So the legacy, as it mentions in regards to King Tut fame, is primarily the result of his well-preserved tomb, the global exhibitions of associated artifacts. So as I mentioned, I mean, a lot of the tomb, things within the tomb was dispersed throughout the world and are in museums. I honestly feel as though that's a form of mocking of your intellect, so to speak. In other words, according to the information that I read, when it mentions about, and I can't remember exactly how it was quoted, as saying that, death to those who, enter within this tomb and things of that nature. And in turn, they end up, dispersing a lot of these things into, other places throughout the world. Have there been any reports of curses? Have there been any reports or any accounts of something happening in terms of that, so to speak? And have anybody even sat down and even think about it? Because it could have very well been the matter of the fact. I honestly believe that a lot of those things were restored as well. It could very well be that some of those things that are in these museums and artifacts and stuff are replicas. Replicated is what I'm getting at, and that not exactly authentic ancient Egyptian artwork or creations. Okay, so it does have a dynasty map layout here, based on the genetic testing and archaeology evidence. Here, and it's I'm pretty sure it's more and more extensive than people would know, because it's not. I feel as though they only can depict as much as they can depict based on what is written and what they're able to decipher and pick up. I honestly believe that the actual true information is kept in a more sacred space. And this is what we allow you to come here and report to the world. But ultimately, that is to let you know that is from another spirit, meaning that is from another, as they say, mother, lover's mother, or so to speak. That's not to say anything to the contrary to the history of King Tut, because I myself, in search of my history and heritage, I began to get the little DNA test or whatever that a lot of you seen the advertisement and stuff like that. Egyptian just so happened to not be a part of my family history from where I gather. And so I will proceed to present information from the history where my people come from in ancient or in my generations before me. Um Egyptian was not one of those. And I think maybe many of people that are in this country were here by way of those who were in the central, the Western Africa, South, or even Central Africa are the ones that are here. Could be very well some come from Egypt and the East Coast, so to speak, by way of, is what I'm getting at. It was a time ago where I mentioned that I did not feel as though I came from slaves. And I continue to, to say that now. I feel as though I just give you my opinion about it. I do feel like most Black people or African Americans within this country come from a lineage that was of slave. I do. I also believe that not all of the Americans of African Americans were slaves. I believe that there were certain social classes of us, even outside of ancient Egyptian, okay, who in turn owned slaves, is what I believe. Hey, call it what you will. This is my own personal beliefs. That's not to say that I think I am better off. No, but I feel like God will alert you within the message. Like there is a message within the message to let you know what it truly is and to mark that belief system, because that's not what it always appears to be. And the biggest trick the devil ever pulled is convincing the world it did not exist. Okay. We can only go off of what they want us to know and present to us. But I'm gonna tell you, if you truly are in favor, you would know that a lot of the stuff that is written is not the truth. You would know that. Okay. So I'm going to close out this new podcast, which I refer to as ancient ancestry, and I will be doing more topics and discussion of ancient ancestry. And I'm not going to only just focus on ancient ancestry in regards to the motherland, but other different cultures and customs as well. So thank you for tuning in. Have a safe and wonderful day.